Welcome back to the channel. It's time to talk about what the worst comic book of the week. And I tried to spare Doc the Dark Web Miss Marvel series. The first issue was just terrible. I decided I didn't want to burden him with that, but the second issue is so much worse. You actually have to see it to believe it. I didn't know you could write a comic book that bad, but apparently Sabir Pirzada, who's a writer for the Miss Marvel TV show as well as Moon Knight, and not much else, along with Francesco Mortarino, the artist on this series, delivered something that is really, it's hard to describe, Doc, just how bad this is.
This was complete meandering nonsense, and it was two different stories being told, one by the art, one by the writer, and they do not mesh well together. But I will say the art was nice. I did like the art. It does
hurt to see good art wasted on something so bad. You can tell Sabir Pirzada has never written a comic book in their life before. There's no even try here. There's no success anywhere whatsoever.
No, all it was more of validate Kamala Khan in graphic sequential art form. I won't even call
this
this
jumping randomly around, like no actual clear-cut story or stuff like that. Let's get to it. In the last issue, she was sent off to limbo by Chasm. So that must have something to do with the story. It must be really important. Not really. She opens up. She houses the demons in limbo, beats the crap out of them, and makes her send her back immediately.
Yeah, way to pay off the tension and the cliffhanger from last issue. Guy that's never written a comic book in his life before. You wrote your way out of it in like 3 pages. You took any amount of dramatic tension away. At no point in this entire comic book did Kamala Khan even feel slightly threatened. She just smacks the shit out of everybody. Why don't you just have her fight Madeline Pryor and Chasm and everyone else? She can obviously beat the shit out of everybody in like 2 panels.
Well, and it's the payoff to something that you delivered in the last issue. It was the cliffhanger, and it's clear he thought he needed a cliffhanger for cliffhanger's sake, but it had nothing to do with the story, so he finishes off in like 4 pages to get back to the actual story that he wanted. Clearly, no idea what he's doing with comic books, and her just showing up in limbo and beating the shit out of everybody. Should we start rooting for the bad guys to defeat Miss Marvel? Are they the ones that are really in danger here?
Yes. By the end of like the 3rd panel of her nonsensical gibberish dialogue about being hangry or hungry or blah, 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 and talking about fucking food because it's a Marvel comic in 2022. By the 3rd panel, I was already rooting for the demons, and I wanted them to rip her limb from limb just so she would shut the fuck up.
Thankfully, that is not the entire comic book. It's only a few pages. There's a thing with the mosque, and we're going to get to that at the end. But we've got to talk about the birds first. So during Dark Web, Madeline Pryor has played a piano, and all of a sudden inanimate objects are like running around the city trying to take things over. That, kind of explains the mosque. But I'm not really certain what these birds that are apparently clones of very smart people, including like Thomas Edison, Leonardo da Vinci, Tesla, all those people that are called the inventors. Apparently bird DNA works better for the cloning process, and they're just there so fucking randomly. What the hell was this about?
I figured I missed something in the first issue because this just kind of popped out of nowhere. Apparently circuit boards get reanimated with the cloning process of inventors and end up in bird DNA body. I feel like they wanted to use beak. This was nonsensical bullshit. I have no idea what the logic here was, but somehow it was just a series of random events. Old inventor, bird clone inventors from history that are suddenly somehow evil and decide to team up to fight Kamala Khan of all people for no reason that I can figure out. If there was a reason, they didn't explain.
Miles Morales shows up because you can't have a Miss Marvel comic book without a bigger star in it. Otherwise, no one would want to read it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, so Miles Morales showed up to sort of help her for like a panel and then dipped out to go do the mosque thing, which we'll get to later. Then she just beats the hell out of bird clone robot people. Was there something that I fucking missed here? Because this was not a story that made any narrative sense. It was like a writer just decided to go, I'll throw whatever random bullshit I can think of at the wall, and nobody thought to say, no,
It's like the worst writing tendencies of like Neil Adams, but with none of the fun involved with it. It's just everything he did that was bad, but amped up like to 100.
Yeah, end of career, end of life Neil Adams, where he
like
was
Dead Man Neil Adams.
Yeah, where it was just, holy crap, what the hell am I reading? That Ra's al Ghul Batman. Holy crap, what the hell am I reading? This doesn't make any fucking sense. That is exactly what we got for the entire duration of this comic book.
It would have been more bearable, Doc, if that's what the comic book basically was, just random nonsense happening. At least maybe there could be a lovability about the comic book. It just wouldn't be off-putting. But there's a big social message in here, Doc, because you didn't know Miss Marvel doesn't understand her community and all the things that are going on with it. And when we made this mosque that is reanimated, this is what the mosque has to say to whatever. Excuse me, Brother Moss, that's someone speaking from the inside. Why do you automatically assume I'm a brother and not a sister? Oh my God, they didn't use the right pronouns on a mosque. Like, are you kidding me?
Fuck you, Comic Books 2022. Seriously, fuck you.
I prefer the non-gendered name JCM. That's Jersey City Mosque. Yes, I understand, and we apologize. We just wanted to ask you why you're climbing the skyscrapers of New York. Isn't it obvious? I'm trying to get away from the Muslim community of New Jersey. They make a mess in the bathrooms. They argue with each other constantly about what day Eid is going to be, when it's supposed to be a joyous holiday. And the older men on the board cling to their authority when they should be training the next generation. I understand Sabir has some issues apparently within his local Muslim community or whatever, but I just don't feel like Marvel Comics is the place to air his personal grievances.
Look, the whole point of when those inanimate objects like turn animate is that they got demon possessed, so they just go crazy, and they're like very lower demons that never get a chance to end up possessing people on Earth. So this is like, they're just like going nuts. And the fact that this one decided to possess a mosque and then take the personality of the mosque, he completely missed the point of all of this. It's not.
No, I don't think so. I think he decided to write his own story, and then he made Marvel pay for him to include it in a dark web series that it made no sense in.
Well, obviously, yes, but the
editor's the one that fucked up here, Doc, for even letting this go through. They didn't understand what dark web was.
You're expecting a Marvel editor to know what anything they're doing is? I mean, you have higher expectations than me, sir. But you are correct. He obviously had his own weird social messaging about his own Muslim community, and that's fine. Go do that in a fucking Atlantic Post. I swear to God, it's like every single person read Ta-Nehisi Coates turning into a comic book writer, since all of his comics were basically just his articles for the Atlantic in graphic storytelling format. And he decided to copy that, but somehow even worse.
Oh, yeah, it's worse because they do get to the bottom of this by the end. The mosque is saved. And it turns out the mosque just needed someone to talk to. So we listened, and then we grew wings, and here we are. Amazing. What was really amazing was that afterwards, everyone stayed safely outside the mosque, and they stayed to listen too. It was a nice group conversation with JCM. That's what we call them. Them, of course, we got to have the pronouns. They've all agreed to make some changes, and I think the community here is going to be closer for it. Thanks for being here. It should have been me solving the Muslim community's issues. I've been a part of this place for years, and I didn't see any of those problems.
Oh, God. Once again, look, this had the opportunity to be a relatively cool story about Miss Marvel being in, an inferno-type New York and battling these inanimate objects and demons and everything. And it just turned into a 2-issue story of typical Miss Marvel comics of her just blabbering about her community and the reason why nobody buys Miss Marvel comics and why that book is constantly sitting just above the cancellation mark.
Well, you can see why no one liked the Moon Knight TV show or the Miss Marvel TV show, because this guy was a part of it.
Oh, absolutely. If this guy has anything to do with anything, just stay away from it. It's probably going to be bad.
All right, Doc, can you explain to me, because I still don't understand, what does Dark Web Miss Marvel have to do with Dark Web? They just slapped it on there so they could actually produce a Miss Marvel copy.
Absolutely. This would be the equivalent of Ghostbusters 2 and fighting inside the Statue of Liberty.
That movie's got some redeeming qualities, Doc.
It does. This was nothing more. This had absolutely nothing to do.
Maybe you should compare it to RoboCop 3.
Really yeah. Bad. Well, there were no walking buildings in RoboCop 3 that I recall. No, this had absolutely nothing to do with dark web, Madeline Pryor, Chasm, any of that stuff. It was just an excuse to give this guy a vehicle to air his grievances about his local Muslim community, kind of hitch it to the wagon, and theoretically somehow connect it to dark web and just go, fuck it, close enough. There's moving inanimate objects. That is the extent.
Here's the problem here, though, Doc. They want Miss Marvel to be a thing. They made a TV show. It didn't really work out. They've been trying to get Miss Marvel over in comic books for years now. They actually made a Miss Marvel video game, called it Adventures, bait and switched everyone and pissed them off. They want her to be a big deal. But as long as they have creators like this attached to the character will never get over, because these stories aren't good, and they're honestly not worth the paper that they're printed on. And basically, they're printed on toilet paper, if that tells you what I think this is worth.
Miss Marvel's starting to really remind me of Speedball, when they really wanted him to get over in like the late 70s and added him, and they were constantly featuring him in all these other comics.
It's Scrappy-Doo without the charisma.
Exactly. Everybody rejected it. The only reason Speedball ever got even slightly over was part of the New Warriors, and they ditched all the annoying bits of it. And until you would ditch all of the annoying things that...
It's creators on this one. It's the creators that always destroy this character.
Exactly, because they turn Miss Marvel, they turn Kamala Khan into a one-note character that the only thing it ever is Muslim, Muslim, Muslim. And if there's any deviation from that, they swing it back to Muslim really fast. And guess what? That is not the way to get your character cannot be a one-note character and get over in the mainstream. And that's all she is.
As I just mentioned, Disney Plus actually released a Miss Marvel TV show. Shockingly, it didn't really go over very well because they didn't have good source material, but that didn't stop the Shill media from trying to explain why everything went wrong, and it really wasn't Miss Marvel or the product's actual fault. It was actually the viewers somehow. Definitely check this video if you haven't seen it. There's also a link in the video description.